Hello, my favorite 7th graders. I hope you guys are doing well. Just wanted to touch base with you. We're going to start today on lesson 27. We're going to talk about multiples, least common multiple, and equivalent division problems. All right, so let's just start right in on it. If you were watching these lessons, guys, and if you're in my class, you really need to be taking notes as we are doing these lessons, writing down everything I do, because how I write it down is how I want you to show your work. All right, so let's launch right into it. First things first, multiples. Multiples are things like multiplication. Multiples of 2 would be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, so on and so forth, right? Multiples of 5 would be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, so on and so forth, right? So it's just multiplying, right? This is where having a multiplication chart is a handy idea because you can look at all of your multiples all nice and neat right there, right? So we're going to use that information today. I'm grabbing the multiplication chart. We're going to use that information today to find the least common multiple, of two numbers, or 3 even. All right, so with that said, let's look at our first example here. Example number 1 says, so go ahead and write this down. Find the least common multiple of 6 and 8. So the way that you would do this is you would sit down and write all of your multiples of 6. And this is just by counting by 6s, right? So 6, 12, 18. So that's 6 times 1 times 2 times 3 times 4. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 5, 30, 36, so on and so forth. Then we have 8s. 8 times 1, 8 times 2, 8 times 3, 8 times 4, 8 times 5, 8 times 6. All right, so we've got all of our multiples listed out here. The least common one that they have in common is, actually, let's keep going on this. 36 times 7 is 42. 6 times 8 is 48, right? Okay, so we have these least common multiples here. And what I'm getting at is that we have multiples, right? We've got 48 and 48, but then we also have 24 and 24. So they have common multiples, but the least common one is the one that you're wanting to find. They have these guys right here would be 24. Generally, by just multiplying 6 times 8, you'll find a multiple, right? But it's not always the least common one, so you gotta be really aware of that. That was example number 1. Example number 2. All right, so let's see here. Least common multiple of 3, 4, and 6. Oh yes, we are doing 3, 4, and 6. 3, 4, and 6. So we are doing more than just 2 numbers, okay? So we would first list all our 3s. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Again, that's 3 times 1, times 2, times 3, times 4, times 5, times 6, times 7, times 8. Okay, and then 4s. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, again, times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 32, right? How about 6? We have 6, 12, times 3, we get 18, times 4, we get 24, times 5, we get 30, so on and so forth. On all of these, we can so on and so forth for all those guys, right? Let's maybe move this up a little bit. There we go. All right, so taking a look at this, we have a bunch of multiples here. We have the first one, though, that we have in common is 12, right? 12. We also have 24 in common, but that is not the least common multiple. So your least common multiple would be 12. 12, okay? Let's see example number 3. Let's use the prime factorization method now. So for example number 3, it's asking us to find the least common multiple of 18 and 24. 18 and 24. Now I could sit here and list out all my 18s. 18 times 1, times 2, times 3, times 4, so on and so forth. There's actually an easier way to do this by doing prime factorization. Let's take our prime factorization. We're going to take 18 and break that down. We get 6 and 3. 3 is prime, so I'm going to circle it. This would be 2 and 3. So the prime factorization of 18 is 2 times 3 times 3. Now let's do 24. We have, actually, let me fix that. We've got 3 times 8. 3 is prime. 8 would be 2 and 4. 2 is prime, and then we break this down to 2. So for 24, what we have is, equals 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. So here's how this prime factorization can help us with this, okay? The big thing that we want to do is look at our groupings. I have one group of 2 here and 3 groups of 2 here, right? What I want to do is make sure that I use the most number that I have. So do you see I have 2 times 2, I've got 3 of them here. So the least common multiple is going to have 1, 2, 3. Now over here I have 2 3s and 1 3. The most that I have is 2 3s, so I'm going to do 2 3s. Okay, now what I can do is take all of these guys together, and this would be 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8, times 3 is 9. So our least common multiple between 18 and 24 is going to be 72. 72. That's an easier way of figuring that guy out. Okay, so let's see about this. All right, guys, so the next part of this unit that we're going to talk about, or a part of this lesson that we're going to talk about, is mental math. A lot of times mental math is what you're going to really use in the real world, so I want to make sure that you've got a good understanding of it, okay? The first example that we have says, if 16 popsicles cost $4, what was the price of each popsicle? So 16 popsicles for $4, right? So I'm going to write that as a ratio, and remember a ratio is just a fraction. So popsicle for $4. The way that we can do this mentally is by cutting things in half, right? So if I cut both these guys in half, what I get is 8 popsicles for $2, right? And then what I get from there is 4 popsicles for $1. Now we're in a position that this is a lot easier mentally, right? Because we know we can break up a dollar 4 ways by doing 25 cents each. So if we come back to our original problem, 16 popsicles was $4. That means they are 25 cents each, 25 cents. And that's how you can find some of this stuff mentally. I know I get after you guys like show your work all the time, right? Some of these things you're gonna start to pick up mentally, and it's a lot easier if you do it that way. Some other tricks for mental math. Let's talk about this. Now we know that you guys are doing really well with the tens, right? If I have 17 times 10, that's gonna be 17 times 1, which is 17 with an extra 0, 170, right? Multiplying and dividing by tens, you guys are pretty good about that. So let's talk about this one. The next example is 220 times, divided by 5. My apologies. Divided by 5. 200, and remember, this is our divided by symbol, right? It's fraction bar, but it's also a division symbol. Okay, so in this case, what we want to do is if we double both of these numbers, right? I will end up with 440 over 10. Now, this is a much easier thing for me to deal with, right? I can lob these zeros off and I end up with 44 out of 1. So this original guy here, the answer is 44. So that's kind of another mental math trick. You can double things, and then as long as you're doing it to both the top and the bottom, you can totally do that and still get the same answer. So that was example 4. Example 5. This one said, dividing 6,000 by 200. 6,000 by 200. Again, this is a great one when we're dealing with hundreds and tens and zeros. You can lob these zeros off. So what I have is 60 over 2. And in this case, both those are even, so we can cut them in half and we get 30 over 1. So 6,000 divided by 200 is 30 over 1, which is just 30. Just 30. Again, these are just some tricks for mentally being able to figure these out. All right, what I want you to do now is turn to your, or actually get out your piece of paper that you're taking your notes on. We are going to do some of the practice problems on page 154, practice A through H. Let's go ahead and get started on those. So pause the video, do those practice problems, then come on back and see if we can help you out here. And we got the same thing, right? I don't know what I'm doing here. There we go, A. All right, so for A, it says find the least common multiple of 8 and 10. 8 and 10, so I list all my 8s out. I get 24, and then 32, and then 40, right? 10, 20, 30, 40. Looks like I got my very first one. 40 is gonna be our least common multiple. So least common multiple equals 40. Let's try B. Find the least common multiple of 4, 6, and 10. 4, 6, and 10, okay? Let's do 4. Whoops. We would get 8. Actually, I could write it that way. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, and so on and so forth, right? That multiples never end. 6, 12, 18, times 4 is 24, times 5 is 30, 36, so on and so forth. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Okay, so far I see that 4 and 6 has 12 in common, but that doesn't have 10. So we got to find something that ends in a 0 because that's what all these 10s do. I see 20 and I see 30, but that's not in common. So let's keep going here. 32, then we would have, so that was 8, 9, so 36, 40, right? 44. Okay, for 6, we would have 6 times 7 is 42. Nope, so it's not going to be 40. 6 times 8 is 48. 6 times 9 is 54. 6 times 10 is 60. All right, so I know that 60 goes into these two, right? So I wonder if 60 goes into 4. So we keep going up. If we look at our either use your calculator or look at your multiplication chart. God, words are hard today. You can look and see if you take 60 and you divide it by 4, it sure does. It's 4 times 15 would give us 60. So it looks like 60 is going to be our biggest one here, right? Or our least common multiple, right? It's pretty big is what I was getting at. Now, another way to do that is, like I showed you earlier, doing your least common multiple with your prime factorization. We could have done the prime factorization of that and that would have helped. But what we can also do is, we're going to do that now for C. So we have 24 and 40. 24 and 40. 24 is 6 and 4. This is 2 and 3. 2 and 2. These are all prime. So we have 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. 40, we have 4 and 10. This is 2 and 2. This is 2 and 5. So this is 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. Make sure I got that right. Okay, so the prime factorization method of finding your least common multiples. Let's start with our 2's. I have 3 2's here and 3 2's here. The most that I have is 3, so we're gonna, our least common multiple is gonna have 3 2's. Now, the next one I have is 3's. I have a 3 here. I don't have one over here, but the most that I have is 1, so I have to include a 1. Same with this 5 here. I don't have it over here, but since it's included, we've got to do that guy. All right, so now what I have is, this is 8 times 3 times 5. Well, 8 times 5 is going to give me 40. Times that by 3, that's going to give me 120. So our least common multiple would be 120. All right, so any questions, let me know. Let's do D really quick together. D, we're going to do the same thing, 30 and 75. Okay, so, all right, guys, so let's do this prime factorization. We get 15 and 2, right? This is prime, this is 3 and 5. So we get 2, 3, and 5. Okay, 75, I know that's 25 times 3, right, if we have 3 quarters. This is going to be 5 and 5, so we've got 5, 5, 3. So I have 3 times 5 times 5. Okay, so the least common multiple, now I have 1, 2 here. I don't have one over here, but I have to include it, so it's going to be a 2. I have 1, 3, and 1, 3, so there has to be at least 1, 3. I have 1, 5 here, but I have 2 5s over here, which means that I have to include 2 5s here. Good, so let's, using a calculator, or if you want to do it mentally, that's fine. We get 25 times 3 times 2 gives me 150. So our least common multiple is 150. Excellent. All right, let's take a look at E. Instead of dividing 7½ okay, so it says, instead of dividing 7½ by 1½ double each number and then mentally calculate the quotient. So instead of doing those, dividing 7½ by 1½ double both of those. Well, 7 and 7 is 14, plus a half and a half is 15. 1 and 1 is 2, plus a half and a half is 3. That gives us 5. So 7.5 divided by 1.5 would give us 5, simply by doubling both the top and the bottom. All right, let's see, F. We have mental calculation for these guys. 24,000 divided by 400. Let's lob those zeros off, and what I have is 240 divided by 4, right? Well, I can cut these in half. I get 120 divided by 2. Cut them in half again, I get 60 over 1. So it would be 60, okay? That was F. Let's do G. We have $6 that we are going to split. Oh, that's $60. $6 divided by 12. $6 divided by 12. Let's cut those in half. We would get $3 divided by 6, okay? Well, we could cut it in half again, but that won't be as helpful. What I think we could do is, instead of 3 here, what we should do is, the best way I would think to do this would be, let me think, if we did, the answer is gonna be 50 cents. So, and the reason being is because we would take, it's gonna take 2 of these for every $1. You could split it like this. If you cut them in half again, you would have 150 divided by 3, and there's 3 groups of 50 cents in that $1.50. So that's kind of a way of thinking about it. It's a little trickier when you're not dealing with cutting in half. I just didn't want to kind of confuse you with like different ways to do it. So I think that would be probably the best way. Let's do H. We have 140 divided by 5. Oops, let me write that the other way. 140 divided by 5. Now, this one is a good one where we could double it. 280 over 10, right? Lob these zeros off, we get 28. So 140 divided by 5 would be 28. All right, guys, hopefully you found that helpful. Go ahead and get started on the homework, and I will see you in class. Thank you.